MLB Commissioner Robert Manfred has finally announced his plans for expansion for Major League Baseball, and it's pretty big. I'm going to break down what he said earlier this week, some possible cities that could be coming to Major League Baseball, and how will the divisions work. Let's get into it. So back on Sunday Night Baseball between the New York Mets and Seattle Mariners earlier this week, Robert Manfred dropped by the broadcast booth to talk about the game. And he dropped some interesting quotes about expansion. Obviously, within the 4 major sporting leagues in North America, only one has done expansion within the last 10 years, and that is the NHL. Not the NFL, not the NBA, not even MLB. Just one. This is what Commissioner Robert Manfred said to kind of kick off this entire extravaganza of what could possibly happen. So he first stated, I think the owners realize there is demand for Major League Baseball in a lot of great cities, and we have an opportunity to do something around that expansion process. Meaning, basically, look, we have cities around that want our game. So we should get in on it and start doing something about it instead of sitting with 30 teams. And I mean, you look at the NHL, they were 30 teams for a while until they brought in Vegas, they brought in Seattle, and it works with 32 teams. They're able to work with 32 teams, and I think Robert Manfred has kind of noticed that. But where it gets really interesting is in what he said next. He proceeded to say, I think if we expand, it provides us with an opportunity to geographically realign. I think we could save a lot of wear and tear on our players in terms of travel. What does this mean? I think Major League Baseball is going to change the entire National League and American League system. You know, 2 leagues that have been around for an entire century. I mean, is this guy going to try and set up an Eastern and Western conference? We don't even know. But this seems like this could be the case. And especially depends on who's coming into the league or not. But he has a point. And you're saying, Adam, why does he have a point? Well, he went on to say, I think our postseason format would be even more appealing for entities like ESPN because you'd be playing out of the East, out of the West, and that 10 o'clock where we sometimes get Boston, Anaheim, would be 2 West Coast teams. That 10 o'clock slot, that's a problem for us. Sometimes becomes a real opportunity for our West Coast audience. And he's basically saying, look, we have a 10 o'clock slot and we get an East Coast, West Coast team. But what if it was just 2 West Coast teams, and that eases the burden off those East Coast teams for playing so many times out West? You know, for me, being a Blue Jays fan, how many times have you wanted to watch the Jays play a West Coast team of some sort? You know, the Seattle Mariners. You know, heck, they played the Dodgers recently. Yes, most of those games were in the afternoon because it was over a weekend, but you play those teams out West, but the games are at 10 o'clock, 9 o'clock. And for the majority of us over here on the East Coast, especially me who has to go to bed early, I can't watch that game, but I want to watch the Dodgers play the Jays. Seattle versus Toronto would be a great game. I can't watch it. But if you eliminate most of those games, it actually becomes easier to watch as a fan. So what happens if the MLB expands? Well, it depends on how many teams come in, because you're probably going to have to change the divisions in some way. You can't keep it 3 times 5, because what's going to happen there is you're going to add 2 teams, and then you have 2 uneven divisions. So you're probably going to have to change how the divisions look in the first place. Do I expect Major League Baseball to expand to multiple cities in 1 year? Probably not. Maybe 2 only. 2 max. I would not say they're doing more than 2 a year. It would be obscenely crazy if they did 4 or 6, because you'd probably like to keep it even, all in 1 year. I have some ideas though. What would happen if Major League Baseball actually did expand? What would that look like? This is my idea for a 32 team league, which actually then equals to 8 divisions. And as you can see, I put in 2 teams there in green. Those are expansion teams. And I'm taking in Robert Manfred's decision here to possibly geographically realign the divisions, and that's what I've done. Basically, these 8 divisions have now kind of become the NFL, right? With the North, South, East, West. But there's obviously some changes. You're looking at the NL West. You have the Dodgers, you have San Diego who play in the National League, but hang on. Now there's Las Vegas. I know currently that's just the Athletics. They're not the Sacramento Athletics, just the Athletics, but they will be in Las Vegas. And then you also have the Angels, right? They're coming over from the American League, both Las Vegas and the Angels. Then you go to the NL South. Arizona, is the only NL team that remains in that division. You add Houston, Kansas City, and Texas. I know Kansas City is not a super south city between the other three. Just how everything fit, that's where they fit. But then the NL North, here's your first expansion team, Salt Lake City. I know there's a lot of people probably in the comments right now saying, what about Portland? What about Austin, Texas? What about blah, 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 blah. Have you seen how Utah's been doing lately with their sports? They just got the hockey team. That's going super well. The basketball team, the Jazz, really well known. I cannot see why they wouldn't want to go to Salt Lake City, a great growing city at this point. So that's why I've picked them. They will join Colorado, which that would probably start a rivalry with each other right away. But then off to the east, you got the Cubs and the White Sox. They're in the same division together. Those games would be absolutely insane between the fans and for the fans. And then you add Cincinnati and St. Louis, both NL teams, so that doesn't change much. But then off to the American League, you have yourselves the American League South. You have Miami and Atlanta coming over. Tampa Bay's in there, but then Nashville's our next expansion team. And this one was also kind of a toss-up between Nashville and Raleigh, but I had to pick Nashville because I think Music City is growing. Obviously, you look at the Titans, they're getting a new stadium pretty soon. You know, could baseball kind of come in and complete the sporting landscape? Obviously, also with the Nashville Predators in there as well. Next, we have the AL North, which this is where my Blue Jays are. The Blue Jays are there. The Detroit Tigers are there. Milwaukee and Minnesota are there. Milwaukee, obviously, a team coming over. But this division, at this current rate this year, would actually be a really good division. With Detroit doing well, Milwaukee being the best team in baseball, and Toronto being one of the best teams in the American League this year as well. So this division right here would be absolute insanity to watch on television. And then to the West, which is also a division that's not really West. There isn't really much of a West on the East Coast, considering how the teams align themselves. But in this spot, I just kind of put Baltimore, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Washington. This division this year would actually be not that really good at all. And then we get to the AL East, which this division is the division of death. You've always mentioned the group of death in the World Cup. This is the division of death. You got the Boston Red Sox. You got the New York Yankees. So that kind of doesn't change. But then here you go, adding the New York Mets and the Philadelphia Phillies to the division from the National League. This would just be insane. And the tough thing with this is there will be teams here that won't be able to make playoffs. Depends on how the playoff setup is, which we'll get to in just a bit, but that division would be insane. So that's how I think a 32-team league would look. But what if they went absolutely bonkers, okay, and did 6 teams in 1 year? So this is how I think it should look. So my 36-team league would have 4 divisions. I know that's nuts. This would just become an absolute mess, but this is how it's going to look. Obviously, the NL West is basically the West Coast. And my 2 teams I've added, Portland and Vancouver. Now, Portland is one of those top teams in the West that wants an MLB team. So I've added them. Vancouver's a bit of a long shot, and I have my point for Vancouver. And basically, during my research, I found that, you know, the Arizona Diamondbacks actually went to Vancouver. Well, the organization did. They went to Vancouver to kind of scout and see if they could play there because the roof at Chase Field not that long ago needed some repair. So they actually went to Vancouver to see if it's feasible and possible for them to play there. So there's a bit of a look-see there. There's a bit of a look-see. And Vancouver has a rich sports history with many teams and many great events. Vancouver would probably be a fantastic city for baseball. But the Central consists of the 2 Chicago teams. Obviously, Salt Lake City still in there. Basically, teams that are right down the middle of the United States of America. Now off to the American League. And we have 2 expansion teams in the AL South. Nashville, which I've mentioned already, and Raleigh, which I also mentioned, but this time they're in. And I think this is all just due based off of the Carolina Hurricanes owner wanting a team there. He's been wanting a team there for a while now, and I don't doubt that he will be one of the first names in to kind of announce that they want an expansion team. So that's why I've kind of put them in there. And the AL South is easy to manufacture because a lot of the teams are already south. The only questionable we have is Cleveland because they're more north than Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, who are in the north, but I wanted to put them there. I wanted to put them together to kind of have that state rivalry in Pennsylvania. Now to the north, obviously I mentioned why Pittsburgh and Philadelphia are there. My expansion team, and this is again kind of like Vancouver, a bit of a long shot in my opinion. Even though many people would like it, I feel like it probably will not happen, and that is Montreal. Montreal would love to have baseball back. I think Canada would love to have Montreal back as a baseball team. Why doesn't it work? Infrastructure. Olympic Stadium, which is where they played, has been an absolute dumpster fire for many years. Literally, one of the nicknames for the stadium is called the Big O. That's O-W-E. It costs a lot, and they're putting a brand new roof on the building. The third roof it's had. MLB probably will look at that and go, I don't know. Should we really go back to a place that we have to give up on, that has a stadium that's still costing the city money, even though it was built in the 70s? That's why I just don't kind of see it happening. But I put it there just for nostalgia reasons, and I'd love to see it. I'd love to see it. Right now, I just can't see it compared to Nashville and Raleigh. Again, in this north, you have crazy teams: Boston, Detroit, Milwaukee, the Yankees, the Mets, Philly, the Jays. The only two teams on this list that are questionables is Pittsburgh and the aforementioned expansion team, Montreal. Now, one of the quotes I mentioned earlier from Rob Manfred was playoffs. So how would this work, really? How would these playoffs work? In my 32 team league, I don't kind of see them going much farther than what they have with their current setup. Now, if you wanted to go nuts, you could probably do an 8-team playoff. You'll definitely have the division winners. Those will be 4 teams per league, no matter what. Now, the next question is, are you just leaving the last 4 spots for whoever, or are you bringing in a absolutely terrible rule, which I'm just thinking about? Is it only going to be top 2 teams in each division? I don't think that will happen. I'm not saying that should happen. I don't think it will, but that could be a possibility, which would also cause a lot of problems, especially looking at that AL East group with the 2 New York teams, Philly and Boston. So I don't see that happening. I'd probably say if you're going to go expand to 32 teams, I'd probably say expand the playoffs as well. Now to the 36 team league. If I had to pick something just simple to go along, I'd probably say the top 3 teams in each division would actually probably get into the playoffs. And then what I might do is the next best 4 get in, and it's all based on record. It's kind of like a wild card in itself, and I think those 4 teams will play in a wild card to come up with the top 8 to get into the playoffs. You know, having 10 teams per league making the playoffs, and then having 4 to play in a wild card, and then they go on to the 8. That just makes it easy, makes it simple. You don't get it too complicated. So MLB expanding. I mean, I'm really excited about it. If it's true, if it's super true to what Rob Manfred said earlier this week, I think it would be awesome. I think it's finally about time that Major League Baseball expands. But anyways, what do you think? Do you think the MLB should expand? If so, what cities? Let me know down in the comments below. Make sure you click the subscribe button to subscribe to my channel. Also, ring the bell to notify when I upload, because I'll be uploading at least 2 times a week. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Peace.